Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharane Nivasesha Sunyavadi Paschachade Shatarane. We'll chant the Shri Ishopanishad. We'll do it maybe a little quick. Is Janak?
Om
Go ahead.
Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadichyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Ishtakashamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena chaktena bunjita magridha kashasvedhanam kurvanevaha karmani jajivashich jatam sama evam tvai nanyate tosti na karma lipate nare asurya namate loka andena tamasavritaha tamste precha bigajanti eke chatma hanojana anijadikam manasojavyo naina devapnubam pravamershat tadhavatonya nachite tistat tasminapo matarishva dadati tarejati tannaijati tadure tadvantike tarantarasya sarvasya taru sarvasya shabhayataha yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhutvijanataha tatrako mohakashoka ekatvam manupashataha Saparijachukram makayamavrinam ashnaviram shudam apapavyadham kavir manishi paribhu swayambur yatha chatoridan pyadadhach chasvatibhya samabhyaha andham tamak pravishanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuyeva te tamo ya uvidyayam rataha anyad evahur vidyaya anyadahur avidyaya iti shushuma dhiranam yenastavi chakshire vidyam cha yas tadviro vayam saha avidyayam ritum tirtva vidyayam ritam ashnute andham tamak pravishanti ye sambhutim upasate tato bhuyeva te tamo yau sambhucham rata Anyad evahur sambhavad anyadahur asambhavat iti shushuma dhiranam yenastadvi chakshire sambhutim cha vinasham cha yastadvedo bhayam saha vinashenamritum tirtva sambhuchamritam ashnute haranmayena patrena satyashapitam mukam tatvam pushana pavrinu satyadharmaya dhrishtaye Pushane karshiyama suya prajapatya vyuha rasmin samuha tejo yate rupam kalyana tamam tate pashyami yo savaso purushaso ham asmi vayuranilam amritam matedam bhasmantam shariram om kritosmara kritam smara Agnenaya supatare asman vishwani deva vayunani vidvan yayoryasmat juhuranamino bhuyishtam te nama uktim videma Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. So today we're doing a review and we'll have a quiz of some sort next week. So we started with the introduction, and this is Srila Prabhupada's lecture at Conway Hall on October 6, 1969 in London, England. And he begins by asking with the question, what are the Vedas? And he covers that the Vedas actually, Veda means knowledge, and the Vedic knowledge are the teachings. They are the original knowledge coming directly from Lord Sri Krishna himself. And the Sri Isopnisad, Srila Prabhupada translates as knowledge that brings one nearer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it is one of the four Vedas, the four Vedas being the Yajur, Sama, Atharva, Rig, and the Sri Isopnisad comes from the Yajur Veda. And Srila Prabhupada mentions how the Vedas are apurusheya. They're above the four defects of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul has the defects of committing mistakes. He's subject to illusion. He has a cheating propensity and imperfect senses. And these four mark the conditioned soul. The Supreme Lord in the Vedic literature and the pure devotees are above these four defects. Therefore, they're apurusheya. And Srila Prabhupada talks about Varnashram Ashram. Varnashram, which is the 8 divisions of society. And he mentions how there's the 4 Varnas, the social divisions, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and the 4 spiritual divisions, or ashramas, which are the Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. He mentions that the Vedic knowledge is axiomatic truth, which means that it has to be accepted without question, that it's beyond mistakes, it's self-evident. He gives the example of the conch shell and the cow dung. Although bone is considered impure and is not to be brought into the deity room, the conch shell is actually the bone of an animal, but yet it's considered pure. And the cow dung in the same way is considered pure, although it's this stool of an animal, which generally we consider to be contaminated. Yet the dung of the cow's dung, a gobar, actually has antiseptic properties to it. We use it for cleaning before yagyas and to purify an area. And Prabhupada also mentions 3 different ways of acquiring knowledge. He says that there's, ways of acquiring evidence for something, that being prajaksha, anuman, and shabda pramana, or shruti. Now that's oral reception. Prajaksha is direct evidence, from our senses. Anuman is the inductive knowledge, or you collect a hypothesis. And Shabda Pramana, or Shruti, is oral reception, which is the best, receiving knowledge from higher authority. He talks about the Vedic knowledge being written by Srila Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva also compiling the Vedanta Sutra, which is the summary of all Vedic knowledge. And after that, he also, under the direction of Narada Muni, wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered the natural, perfect commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And talks about complete realization of the absolute truth as opposed to incomplete realization. Incomplete realization being Brahman and Paramatma, and Bhagavan being the complete realization of the absolute truth. Brahman being the Lord's effulgence, which is composed of different living entities, spirit souls, is a realization of the Lord's eternity aspect, Sat. And Paramatma is realization of the Lord's Sat and Chit, eternity and knowledge features. Paramatma being the Jirodakshaya Vishnu expansion of the Lord who enters into the hearts of all living entities and enters into the atoms. And the Bhagavan feature of the Lord contains both Sat, Chit, and Ananda, bliss. It has more, it's the complete. We discussed in a different verse, so there's Kalyana, auspicious, and then there's Kalyanatara, more auspicious, and Kalyanatamam, most auspicious. So the Brahman feature is auspicious, Paramatma is more auspicious, and Bhagavan is the most auspicious. It's most complete. And that's complete realization. And also this all emanations from the Lord are complete in themselves, as this phenomenal world has been created by the Lord to be complete and to provide everything necessary for the maintenance and sustenance for all in this world. And there's no need for any separate unit to work this world. It functions by the Lord's arrangement on a set time scale. It's designed to be self-contained. And the human beings can realize their completeness by engaging in the Lord's service, by connecting with the Lord, by dovetailing all their activities to the Lord. And we talked about the Ishavasya principle, which means that everything is controlled and owned by the Lord, and that one should accept only what is necessary for oneself. We talked about, let's see, the Lord's energies when they're divided into Paraprakriti and Aparaprakriti, which the Paraprakriti is the Lord's superior spiritual energy, and Aparaprakriti is the Lord's inferior material energy. In mantra 2, we discussed karma, akarma, vikarma, and karma bandhana, which, let's see, karma in this mantra is discussed as actions performed in terms of one's prescribed duties, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures, fruit of activities. Akarma is also known as naishkarmya, or actions that free one from the cycle of birth and death. And vikarma, or actions performed through the misuse of one's freedom. And then karma bandhana talks about is karma bondage, actions that bind one to the cycle of birth and death. Mantra 3, we talk about asuras and suras. The suras, they are always directed toward the Supreme Lord. They take responsibility for their actions, for their duties, and they act in the Ishavasya spirit. They use their human form to attain ultimate perfection, whereas the asuras are irresponsible for their prescribed duties. They don't act on the spiritual platform, and they don't have knowledge of the Supreme Lord. The suras ultimately attain the Lord's association, whereas the asuras go down to lower regions, lower life forms. And this mantra also talks about the Atmaha, or the killer of the soul, whoever he may be. must enter into the darkest regions of ignorance. The planet's known as the world of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. That's the destination for the Atmaha, the killer of the soul. Those are those who do not fully utilize their human form for self-realization. They neglect the higher interest. And we talked about the prime responsibility of a human being is self-realization to solve the problems that we all face, birth, death, old age, and disease, to end it and go to the eternal spiritual world. We talked about, also in here, it mentions the difference between humans and animals, where animals are only interested in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Humans, they have sufficient intelligence to inquire about who they are, about the self. They can understand about God. They can engage in activities for a higher purpose, for self-realization. We also talked about the Lord's, although the Lord has Parasya Shakti Vividhaya Shriyate, unlimited potencies, they can be categorized into three, and that is the internal, external, and marginal potencies. And the external, the Bahiranga Shakti, it manifests the material world, and the internal, Antaranga Shakti, manifests the spiritual world, whereas the Tatastha Shakti is the Jiva source, marginal potency. They can be either part of the spirit world or part of the material world. Also, we talked about the difference in the Mayavadi schools, their conception of the absolute, and the Bhagavat school, their concept of the absolute truth. Whereas the Mayavadis, they do not believe in a personal God. They believe the supreme is impersonal, Brahman is the supreme. Whereas the Bhagavat school teaches that God is both impersonal and personal, that his personal feature is the highest. The Brahman is just one aspect of the absolute truth. The Lord has inconceivable potencies, and without having inconceivable potencies, there will be no meaning to the word Supreme Lord. So he has to have everything. That means the Supreme Lord. It also talks about in here about deity worship, worshiping the Lord's form as the Archa Vigraha, as the deity. It's not idol worship, although made of material elements like stone, wood, metal. There's 8 that we talked about when we read that verse. But although they're material, the Lord is omnipotent, and that he makes no distinction, material or spiritual. It's all his energy. His material energy can be spiritual. His spiritual energy can become material. He appears in his deity form to receive service from his devotees. And the Lord, he comes upon the request from the acharyas. And by serving the deity, one can develop one's love for God. So this is the reason the Lord comes in this form, because we have material senses. So we can relate to the Lord in this way, but there's no difference. The Lord is fully manifest in his deity form. Then we talked about how the Lord enters everything by his plenary portion. Kshodakshai Vishnu. He enters as the super soul. This is how how the Lord is both within and without of everything. He's within everything by his plenary portion, and then he's outside of everything by his Virat, universal form, which contains all space and time in the cosmos. Everything in this, everything is a manifestation of the Lord's different energies, and there's oneness with the Lord's diverse energies, but the Lord still enjoys, it says, in his personal form. So he's one with, yet different from. That's our philosophy of Chinta Beta Beta Tattva, is most perfect. It mentions how describes the Lord as Saguna and Nirguna. Saguna means with qualities. The Lord appears with perceivable qualities, but they're not material qualities. They're not subject to the laws of nature. And he's also Nirguna. He's described as Nirguna, which means without qualities, because he has no material qualities. Although he has qualities, they're not material like our qualities. Then it talks about the different levels or stages of realization on the path of bhakti. There's the Kanishta Adhikari, the Madhyama Adhikari, and the Uttama Adhikari. The Kanishta Adhikari is the beginner stage, the lowest stage of realization, where one generally only perceives the Lord in the temple. And he visits the church, mosque, or temple, performs some service there, but is not able to ascertain who is an advanced devotee and who's not. So oftentimes he may quarrel with other devotees, not properly being respectful. And they may even think one type of devotion or one church is better than others. He's considered like a materialistic devotee, not fully purified. And then the Madhyama is the second level of realization. Madhyama makes distinctions between four different categories. He sees the Supreme Lord, whom he has affection for. He sees the devotees, who he makes friendship with, and then distinguishes with sees the innocent, who he tries to give bhakti to. He tries to engage in service. He gives mercy to the innocent. And then also he sees the atheist, who he generally avoids. And then the Uttama Adhikari, which is the highest stage in devotional service, that's where the devotee sees all things in relation to the Lord. He sees the Lord everywhere and does not discriminate. He doesn't discriminate due to bodily types or even different beliefs. He sees everyone as spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna. And Prabhupada mentions how actual knowledge of actual brotherhood, universal brotherhood, we must approach the Uttama Adhikari. Talks about we talked about Anupashyati. This is a very significant word. Anu means to follow, and Pashyati means that one should not see things with the naked eye, because we have imperfect senses, which we talked about. So it means to observe by following, to learn by following. So we should see by following the previous acharyas. We have to hear descriptions of transcendence, descriptions of the Lord from those who have a superior angle of vision. Their knowledge has been passed down through disciplic succession, And by following them, it gives us a proper perspective. And that is what anupashyati means, to follow. Follow by hearing, follow by not seeing with the naked eye, but seeing through Shastra, seeing through the Divya Gyan, the knowledge given by previous acharyas who are coming in disciplic succession from the Supreme Lord himself. And it talks about how we're one with the Lord, yet different from the Lord. We're one with the Lord in quality, but yet different from the Lord in quantity. Just as a spark of fire has the same quality as the large fire, the spark has the ability to burn on a much smaller scale and give a little light. But yet the big fire can burn in a great way. So he also gives the example of a drop of ocean water as opposed to the whole ocean. So same in quality, but not quantity. Verse 8, we talk about how the Lord is without veins. It's significant because the Lord doesn't have a form like ours, made of material elements. Ours is like a machine which requires these tubes and pipes and veins to run properly. The Lord's form is Satchidananda Vigraha. Each of his limbs can perform the function of all the other organs. So he doesn't need veins. He doesn't need any of the parts that we have in our body, in our material body. And it also mentions how the Lord is antiseptic and prophylactic. Antiseptic in the sense that even if impure things come in contact with the Lord, they become purified. He helps the conditioned soul to be cured of our material contamination, of lust, greed, illusion, envy, pride, prophylactic. By the power of his association, one is protected, like a preventative medicine. Even the most impure person can be considered pure if he's engaged in the Lord's service. That service will quickly rectify one. Let's see. And then 9. How are we doing? Okay. 9. We talked about when knowledge becomes more dangerous than ignorance, or so-called knowledge, and that it's when it's misinformation, or when that knowledge is used to mislead people. Oftentimes, people become very proud of their gathered knowledge. And I think this is the one where it talked about the snake with the jewel on the head. People become attracted to this jewel on the head, which can be this so-called knowledge, and they can use that to mislead people. Like the Vedavada Ratas. Prabhupada talks about the Vedavada Ratas, who are so-called students of the Vedas. They also are progressing into the darkest region of ignorance by misinterpreting the Vedic literature. They're pseudo-spiritualists who mislead others about the true conclusion of the Shastras. They claim to be scholars of the Vedas, but are not in disciplic succession, and therefore not authorized. And they concoct their own understanding and miss the true goal, which is Krishna, is the goal of the Vedas. Vedaischa sarveraham eva vedya, Vedanta krit veda vedeva chaham. They prefer to believe that the goal of the Vedas is sense gratification by elevation to higher planets, worship the demigods to get this and that and the other thing. And due to their gross misunderstanding, they fall down, go up and down, up and down, up and down, yet they stay in the material world. So therefore, they enter the darkest regions of ignorance. The Maya Parita Jnanas, that are those who are puffed up by material accumulation of knowledge and think themselves to be God. They do not consider how God could be overpowered by the material energy as they are. That would make Maya more powerful than God. Then we talk about the wise. I've explained that one result is cultural knowledge. Listed the different elements of knowledge as they are also in Bhagavad Gita, as were listed. And we talk about how we have to learn from the Dhira, that the Dhira is sober. Dhira means sober. A Dhira is a person whose senses are under control. They're not disturbed by material illusion. They're realized, perfectly spiritually realized. They Brahmabhuta prasanatma na sochati na kankshati. They neither hanker nor lament. They have no reason to because they're beyond, above the bodily platform. The body and mind are foreign to them. Therefore, they make the best use of a bad bargain, Prabhupada says. They receive the knowledge from higher authorities in disciplic succession from Krishna. They realize this knowledge by following regulative principles unattached to material circumstances. And this is whom we should receive our knowledge from. Dearest Tatra Namuyati. And we talked about how some people say you can worship anybody and we'll all go to the same place, but that's not Krishna's opinion. All paths do not lead to the same goal. Those who worship the demigods go to the demigods. Those who worship the ghosts and spirits will live among such beings, and those who worship Krishna will live with him, he says. So they do not lead to the same. And then we also talked about Sambhuti and Asambhuti. Sambhuti is the absolute personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And Asambhuti is those who have no independent existence like the demigods. And the goal of worshiping Sambhuti is to attain the Lord's eternal spiritual abode, blissful abode. And the goal of Asambhuti is some temporary result, like worshiping of the demigods is to attain some temporary, it's something temporary. Therefore, the result of worshiping Sambhuti is to remain in the material world, a repeated birth and death. You may attain to some heavenly planet, but again, you have to come down, fall down. It's temporary result, so it's futile. Then we talked about how we're doing. That was Sambhuti. He talks about how negation is not a complete, will not give you a complete realization of the absolute truth. That was Negation. So, yeah. Mentions how negation is not complete, and by negation, one will imagine that the absolute must be formless. So the highest one can reach is the Brahman realization. Such negative qualities are simply the reversals of relative material qualities and are therefore also relative. By negating, it's not this, it's not that, it's not that. It's very time-consuming process. But it will not lead one to realization of the personal form of the Lord. One may reach the Brahman level, but one will not fully understand the absolute truth by the process of negation. It's merely a speculative process. We talked about demigod worship. It's also ultimately futile. Okay. And let's see. The knowledge of Krishna ultimately brings one to Krishna. It gives one deathlessness. It gives one eternal life in Krishna's spiritual blissful abode. And one becomes deathless by not receiving knowledge of Krishna, by realizing his nature. And we talked about Tripad Vibhuti and Ekapad Vibhuti. Tripad Vibhuti is the Lord's spiritual world, the spiritual energy. Let's see, and Ekapad Vibhuti is 1/4, means 1/4, that's the material world. The spiritual world is 3/4 of the Lord's creation from his internal potency. Prabhupada mentions that one can have a variety of relationships with the Lord. There's 5 primary rasas or relationships. Those being the Shanta, neutrality, like a blade of grass, a tree. So, and one can have a relationship of a servitor, or dasya. Can serve Krishna in many ways. One can have a relationship as a friend, sakya, cowherd boy. One can have a relationship as a parent, parental affection, vatsalya. One could, or madhurya, conjugal love, like the gopis or the queens. Says that the Lord never leaves Vrindavan, but he's able to manage the affairs in creation by his plenary portions. He expands as Paramatma. And again, the Brahmajyotis explained again that it's the Lord's effulgence made up of the different Jiva souls. Yet there's something greater than the Brahmajyoti, therefore the devotee is asking the Lord to remove it because he wants to see the Lord's original, real face, the Samambonam, the ultimate. And Jiva Goswami gives us more meaning on the word Bhagavan. He says that Bha, the first syllable means one who fully maintains, and it also means guardian. Ga means guide or leader or creator. And Van means every being lives in him and he lives in every being. He says that the transcendental sound Bhagavan represents infinite knowledge, potency, energy, opulence, strength, and influence, all without a tinge of material inebriety. Prabhupada mentions that some Jiva souls enter the material world because the Lord allows them. He reciprocates with their desire to lord it over, and to imitate the Lord and try to lord it over and enjoy separate from Krishna. Mentions here that the only ones who can understand the activities of pure devotees are pure devotees themselves. We talked about how it's difficult for people to understand the activities of a pure devotee whose only interest is the interest of the Lord. All their energy, time, everything at their disposal is engaged in the Lord's service. And this is difficult for ordinary people to understand, but pure devotees can understand. Prabhupada talks about the 9 processes of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, and who perfected their lives through following each one, like Parikit Maharaj perfected his life by hearing. Sukadev Goswami perfected his life by speaking, by chanting. Prahlad Maharaj perfected his by remembering. I was trying to find the page. Yeah. Yeah, Akrura attained his desired result by praying, by remembering Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah. By worshiping Prithu Maharaj attained perfection. Lakshmi, by serving the Lord's lotus feet. By rendering personal service to Lord, Hanuman attained the desired result. And through his friendship with the Lord, Arjuna attained the desired result. And by surrendering everything he had to the Lord, Maharaj Bali attained the desired result. They all achieve perfection. So if one can engage in one process, 2, 3, as many as we can, the more the merrier. We talked about what happens to those who have unflinching faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, that all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. So that's where we need to focus. We have an eternal debt to the Lord and the spiritual master, one we can never repay, yet it's our duty to attempt to repay this debt. So I think I tried to cover everything. Does anybody have any questions so far? I tried to narrow it down because so far I actually have 52 questions, and I don't know if we'll have time to cover all those questions.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Mataji, I have one question. I think you mentioned that the Lord material form can be spiritual, but I think you also mentioned Lord's spiritual form can be material. Can you please enlighten that on more on that?
It mentions in the Krishna book that although spiritual, Pradyumna had a material form. It mentions that in the Krishna book. So the Lord makes no distinction. Matter, spirit, actually everything is spiritual. It's when we see things separate from the Lord that it becomes material. But that's what it says, you know, so that's Pradyumna. I could try to look it up.
Also, like Krishna's Vishwarupa form is not eternal, right?
Right, right.
That's also, we can say,
That's made of material elements.
material, it's not eternal.
Right.
But by material elements, usually it's considered like mucus, bile, and all that, bone. So it's
Yeah,
not that.
and multiple time it has been mentioned now we should not be consider Lord form as material.
Right, having
It comes
mucus,
in a
bile,
spiritual
and
body.
bone and all that,
Kind
yeah.
of confused.
Yeah, we have a different conception of material, you know, because ultimately everything is spiritual because it comes from Krishna. But when we see it as separate, then it's material.
So you're saying Jiva, like pure devotee's form is spiritual,
Yes,
not material.
yes. Therefore,
So that's why
we
they're
bury their body in the earth, you know.
earth in samadhi, yeah, because it's completely spiritualized. It's
Yeah.
not material form.
Yes. That's why even some go back in the same same form.
Same body, yeah.
Is it Mataji Pandavas went in the self same body with Draupadi?
I heard something like that. I don't know for sure. I would have to, maybe somebody else knows. Anybody on here know? I don't know. But then many births, both you and I have, I can remember all, but you can't. You know, it talks about Arjuna taking birth. I don't know. Do you know? The Pandavas, did they leave their body? Did they go back in their same body? Yeah, that's what I thought. They dropped their body. So
Okay, Mataji, thank you.
maybe the same subtle body, because it was purified. I don't know.
Yeah, I reading remember, but it was quite a long while ago, so
Yeah,
that's why I didn't check it.
but I don't remember that.
Okay.
Any questions?
Mataji, you, Prabhuji, you had question. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, bro. I
Okay.
do not have a question.
Mataji, you mentioned about Saguna and Nirguna. So Saguna, you mentioned qualities which are not material, and Nirguna, he doesn't have any material qualities. So the
Yeah, so-
Nirguna means basically don't have qualities, but those are not material. So basically, in terms of the Lord, this is the same thing, right? Saguna and Nirguna.
Yes, basically the same thing. When sometimes people just say the Lord is nirguna or saguna, yeah. So when
And,
it's applied to the Lord, that's what it means. Yeah.
And at the start, you mentioned about the conch shell. It is a bone.
It's a
Prabhupada gives a reason for cow dung. It is an antiseptic. But for bone, does he give a reason? Means
he just
why
says
do we?
it's pure. He said it's considered pure, and therefore it's
Okay.
allowed in the deity room. It's an axiomatic truth. We just have to accept it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
But
meaning
you
of
see the
axiomatic.
difference. You know, if you
I-
look at the conch shell and other shells, to me, it looks different. Maybe I'm biased, but
Yeah, it does look different and clean and beautiful.
it does. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, an axiomatic I just looked up means like self-evident and unquestionable.
Right.
But you also mentioned that Isopnisad talks of elements of knowledge like the Bhagavad Gita. What elements of knowledge did you mean?
Oh, remember, was it mantra? Oh, like humility, pridelessness, accepting a bona fide spiritual master. You know, is it chapter 13, text 8 through 12 or something? It lists the characteristics of knowledge, beginning with humility and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Chapter 13, 8, huh?
in Bhagavad Gita, I think.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember which one in the Isopnisad. Oh, my eyes are blurry.
Mantra 10, right?
Is it mantra 10?
Yes, Mataji, mantra 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it says, as advised in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, 8 through 12, one should culture knowledge in the following way. One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. They're same as the in Bhagavad Gita, just maybe
Yeah,
different.
humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, yeah, approaching a bona fide spiritual master.
Yeah.
Cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of objects of sense gratification. Yeah, it's a long list.
Yeah. So these are characteristics of knowledge, and we're meant to cultivate them. By the gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. Except for these, all other methods are considered to be in the category of nescience. Yeah, so that's mantra 10.
Jiva Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jiva Mataji. Thank you for summarizing the whole Isopnisad. I have one doubt in the introduction, wherein it says that between 4 ashramas and 4 varnas, the varnashrama system is explained. There, can we, if we divide into a matrix wherein we put all the ashramas on the top, like brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa, and then on the left hand side, if we put brahman, kshatriya, vaishya, and shudra, like that way, if we make up a matrix, then can we say that all 4 varnas can go through all the 4 different ashramas, or because whatever we have heard, it's only like kings and brahmanas, they are only going into the 4 different ashrams. Can we say that even Vaishya and Shudra can also follow the 4 ashramas like brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa? Is it like all 4 varnas can follow parallelly, or it has to be only like like through Brahman only they can only follow the brahmacharya, the sannyas ashram? That part I am not completely understood, Mataji.
Well, in this age, sannyas is not recommended. I mean, it's okay for preaching, but in general, because everybody's a Sudra, so generally Sudras don't take sannyas. But brahmachari is like student life, maybe it's not so formal, their acceptance of brahmachari. It's when one is young, student life. Yeah. Prabhupada mentioned that the Varnashram denotes followers of the Vedas. So generally, those who would follow the Vedas, they would try to follow these different ashramas, So
Okay.
whether one is a Shudra or any of them, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmin, if they're following the Vedas, then they would try to follow these divisions. But the farther we get away from following the Vedas, the farther we get away from observing these societal and spiritual divisions.
Mhm.
Um,
Or
But generally, those who you mentioned as Brahmins and Kshatriyas, maybe they're stricter at observing, Vedic ceremonies and the samskaras and things. So they would be more conscious of following those.
Okay. So is it like different ages, different rules are there, Mataji? Or these are the...
Yeah, in Satya Yuga, everybody was Brahminical.
Mm-hmm.
There was one class. Everyone was Brahminical. Everybody meditated as the process. In general.
In general, okay. So in Dwapar, Treta, and Kali, the lower class become more powerful
Yeah,
than the upper class,
more prominent. Yeah.
more prominent. Okay. So now, is it in Kali Yuga? Is it like if they are Shudras, then they need to come to the at least to a Brahmana level, then they can follow the 4 ashramas.
No.
Basically, towards the end, we can say that the Brahman, like only sannyas is limited to Brahmanas, or those who are following Brahman or Vedic system, they only can take up to the sannyas ashram. So I just wanted to know, are there any parameters defined for taking into vanaprastha or sannyas? Because grahastha and brahmacharya, more or less, all the class might be following.
Mhm.
But vanaprastha and sannyasa, they are like like the top level of ashramas. And are there any parameters defined that only they can go in these 2 categories of ashramas?
Hmm. That would be an interesting study. Maybe somebody has done a study on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But yeah, the further we get away from the Vedic life,
Lifestyle, yeah.
yeah.
Then more it will be like the understanding.
My husband just walked in. I was wondering if he had any
Yeah.
insight on. Can you repeat your question?
My question, are there any parameters defined for going to vanaprastha and sannyas ashram? Because the yoga, the varna and ashrama system, if we divide, like there are 4 ashramas and 4 varnas. But generally what we have seen is like a Brahman or a Kshatriya goes into sannyas ashram, but we never heard that even like Shudra going into a sannyas ashram. So are there any parameters defined that only these, after following these parameters, they can go into sannyas or vanaprastha ashram?
You're talking about some Shudra or Vaishya who wants to take sannyas?
Yes, Prabhu. Like
Okay.
in varnashrama matrix, if we divide varnashrama system, so like 4 ashramas will be on the top and then 4 varnas will be on the left. Brahman, Vaishya, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And then it will be 4 brahmacharya, 4 ashrams, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So my question is, any 4 of 4 varnas can go into sannyasa ashram, or it will be only, like, what are the parameters defined in shastras for vanaprastha and sannyasa? Is
Well,
it like accessible for any varnas?
well, I mean, first of all, everyone is born a Shudra, and then you
I
work
agree.
from there. I mean, I don't know what the rest of the world does. I mean, in ISKCON, generally, you're not even a kshatriya, just if you're very Brahminical. And then at some point, when you're advanced, then you take sannyas. So it's not even kshatriya. I know in Vedic culture, yes, kshatriyas also. But, you know, I just deal with what we have. We got to work. We don't, who do we have as a kshatriya that takes sannyas in ISKCON?
No, I don't.
We pretty much-
What I in ISKCON, what I heard, Prabhu, like GBC decides like there is a 5-year process. If one applies for sannyas ashram, then like all GBC members, they should have a good vote. Then after a certain process, then it goes to a sannyas. I came to know, like there was one Prabhuji in Radha Desh, as in one Prabhuji, he was a brahmachari. Then he went on to become sannyas ashram, Leela Shukha Prabhu. So he once told me that these are the processes that he needs to wait for another 5 years for taking sannyas ashram. So ISKCON part I am aware, but only from the Vedic, from Ishopanishad point of view, that I was not clear, Prabhu.
Well, I would think in the Vedas, it's just those two ashrams that take sannyas.
Mm-hmm.
If Vaishya wants to take sannyas, then start acting like a kshatriya or a brahmin. And
Yeah.
when your qualities and your work. So why would you want to take sannyas as a Vaishya? Because, well, I can make more money.
Right. I also
On the cost.
think so, Prabhu. But
Anyway, you asking because your wife's making you do a lot of household chores?
But who are the kshatriyas who take sannyas, Pierre?
I don't know, but I do know that they renounce.
Yeah, I mean, like even Vidura asked the Dhritarashtra to take Vanaprastha, to go to the forest, that is there.
Well, Vishwamitra Muni comes to mind. He was a Kshatriya king before he became a.
No, but he wanted to be a Brahmin.
Yeah, but from Brahmin, didn't he become a sannyas? Like, didn't he wear the saffron? I see him pictures in saffron.
Yeah, but
Bharat Maharaj also isn't, Mataji. He's a king, right? Kshatriya king.
who's a Kshatriya king?
Bharat Maharaj
Maharaj,
also.
she said. But that was he, did he take sannyas or Vanaprastha?
I don't know if any of them formally took sannyas. They renounced, but I don't
They
know.
renounce. I don't know if it's sannyas.
Yeah.
But they also Brahmins thread. They get different.
Kshatriyas,
Yeah.
like even demons also renounce, right, Prabhu? Like we see, a lot of asuras. They also do a lot of tapasya.
Yeah.
So Vanaprastha and sadhana, that is there, but only sannyas part, that is, I think, I'm little unclear, but that I think it should be a little bit closed, and there has to be some parameters that only after following these things, that, like how we have it in ISKCON, maybe some Vedic way also, there might be something, some rules and regulations.
I mean, you're getting into just like some little rules and regulation. How does it affect you personally, or
No,
how
I
does
mean,
it affect
in
even
introduction,
ISKCON?
in introduction part, Prabhu, it was written like 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. So
Yeah.
what I did is I divided that into a matrix. So then I was thinking that let's say brahmanas, we heard that they can go straight away, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So that that way, that is clear, that path is clear. But what about let's say if a shudra is there or vaishya is there, do they need to rise till brahman and then go to the vanaprastha and sannyas? So that way I was little unclear, so that's why I thought of asking. I know it doesn't affect me.
I don't
But-
think Shudras would ever take sannyas.
Yeah, I think that's why it's considered forbidden. I have research.
I'm not even sure if there's brahmacharis, and I think they just kind of take on the trade. I don't think they go. I don't know if they get an education other than just the trade or whatever they're working.
But Prabhu, if you go in this what you call in Advaita philosophy, or people who they Shankaracharya philosophy, or those people, they also have a formal setting, Prabhu. Even like the lowest aghoris and all these Naga sadhus and other these people also, they have a formal initiation wherein some senior person gives them but they also have maintained parampara. So that's what I read it, but
Well, let me just say, they've been around for like thousands of years or a long, long time. We've been around just a very short time. Just like now we're doing Bhakti Shastri and Bhakti Vaibhava, and these things that never happened before when Prabhupada was here. There was none of that. So Prabhupada did think we should have it, but it wasn't established. So I'm sure, I mean, I know that Jayadvaita Swami was talking about having some, we don't have, and we should have a special thing for Vanaprasthas. We should have a ceremony and maybe a different dress or something for Vanaprasthas. So we don't have that yet. I'm thinking in the future, if you come back again, you may find out all these answers.
Say no, thank you, Sundar Gopinath.
Well, you can just think of Krishna and don't even bother. I mean, it's nice to know that, but I don't know that. We're not Sanskrit
I
scholars.
just out of curiosity, Prabhu, that was just I
Right.
was reading the thought of, just I was not able to understand it, that aspect, so thought of asking, because in Ramayana also there was one incident wherein Lord Ram actually killed one Shudra who was doing tapasya. So tapasya was not meant for Vaishyas and Shudras. It was only meant for Kshatriya and Brahmana, because that was the maybe a Treta Yuga.
When did
So
you kill a Shudra?
yeah, there is one story, Prabhu, where Lord Ram, there was some inauspicious, I vaguely remember, there was some inauspicious thing happening in Lord Ram's ruling. So he was not able, Lord Ram, after investigating, found out that one Shudra was doing tapasya. So then Lord Ram went and killed him. So there,
It's
I
in the
mean,
Ramayana. That's in the
yeah,
Ramayana.
it's in the Ramayana, Prabhu.
I've read the Ramayana. I don't remember ever reading that. Anyone else read the Ramayana? Do they remember that?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Sanjay. So yeah, I think the Prabhu is mentioning this incident from Uttarakhand. So this is the last chapter, and the name of this Shudra is Shambhuka. So I think even there it is mentioned that this was the norm for Treta Yuga, but in Kali Yuga, all four burners can do austerities, so there is no restriction. I think in Satya Yuga, in the same chapter, it was written that in the Satya Yuga only Brahmins could do austerities. And then gradually in Treta, Brahmin and Kshatriya. In Dwapara, the three classes, Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. And Kali Yuga, everybody, all four classes can do the austerities. So that's one point. Another point I want to stress, the last chapter, which is the one you mentioned, Prabhu. Many scholars think this is an interpolation, so it's not authentic. It's a later edition. It was not original, in the original part of the Ramayana. And also this incident is not present in Bhagavatam. So not in Bhagavatam, not in like other Puranas, like I think Brahmanda Purana also had the whole story of Ramayana, and the Shambhuka, the Shudra, Tapasi, that story is not there. So many people think, that story was not authentic, and it just, was inserted later.
Mm-hmm.
Ram embraced Guha, he was in a lower caste. Why would he kill a Shudra like that? I don't think it's a true story.
Yeah, also I think in Ram's court, the highest priest was Satyakam Jabala. I think he was even born of, like unwed mother. So even he didn't have like, any class, any caste basically. But he was appointed as the highest priest because he was appointed to Brahmin by his austerities and penances. So I think, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of points. I think it's the story of this Shudra is a little bit debated. So, there is points on both sides, but I think,
I think next week when we're having this quiz and we're dividing everyone up, I would advise, if you can, try to get on Sanjoy Day's team.
Because the answer will be A and B.
Good one, Maltipriya Mataji. Thank you, Prabhu.
very good, bro.
Thank you, Pyari Prabhu, for giving me a household chore.
Yeah,
So Sundar Gopinath Prabhu, finally, are you taking sannyas or no?
No, Prabhu.
It always comes down to that. doesn't
So,
it?
Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Now, after he finishes his household chores, he can do sannyasi thing.
He's been plotting for a long time now.
No, Mataji.
Yeah, he asked multiple times. Yes, I agree.
I have no objection as long as he completes his household chores. I'm really frank about it. Really.
That never be completed in this lifetime, Mataji.
See, Padmalochini got me.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
Jiva Mataji, Pyare Prabhu, how the quiz would be next week? Can you please let us know?
How the what?
Quiz will be. how's the-
Here's my idea. It's too difficult to do it where if you get the answer wrong, it goes to the next team. So there'll be one question. I'm thinking, depending how many people there are, how many teams you have, but there'll be one question. Everyone can hear it, but it'll be like for team B or team A, and they have like 30 seconds to answer the question. And then if it's wrong, we just tell you the answer. No, doesn't go to anyone else. And then the next team gets a question.
I think last time we did the same way in Thanksgiving. We did like that.
We didn't do that.
Last time, yeah, we didn't put the time, but I think 30 seconds is very too less, Prabhuji.
Yeah, it might be.
I'm not sure.
Might be.
Yeah,
We have to make
maybe
it
1 minute. Yeah.
maybe. But we're trying to
He's
get
Padmalochini's team.
what?
I am in Bhakti Shastri. Who is giving Bhakti Shastri? In that team I am in, because they are reading now.
Well, let's see if anybody shows up.
Yeah.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Rasraza. So, it will be all short, multiple question. We are not giving any short answer questions.
What's the soft answer?
Short.
Short answer?
Yeah.
There might be some short answers, but not multiple choice.
So, not like that. I mean, a few days before Ganpati Prabhu called me and talking about putting the questions in a Google form and they will, devotees will submit. Not like that.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the quickest way, easiest way is that you just have the different teams. We ask one question. If they get it right, they get 1 point. They get it wrong, the next team gets another question.
I didn't pick the teams. How many teams?
Prabhuji, is it Mataji's versus Prabhuji's, or it will be differently distributed this time?
There's too many Matajis.
That's very nice, right?
Prabhu, only Krishna. Krishna is Prabhu, all are Matajis.
That's why I said there's too many Matajis.
Haribo. That good one, Pyare Prabhuji.
Yeah,
Srinivas Acharya Prabhu will also be joining. I'll be in his group, Prabhu.
No, you can't decide your team by yourself.
We are in
Pyare
Jiva
Prabhu will decide.
group.
I
Jiva
don't
Mat-
think anyone will pick their team. I think we'll just have, I'll look at the screen.
Number 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we'll just give
Figure how many
everybody
teams.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
You know, so we have 4 teams, and whatever you happen to be.
I would like to be in Jiva Mataji's team.
She's asking the question.
Oh,
I'm checking, I'm doing the time. I may ask the questions, I don't know. Just
okay.
hope so. Okay, so hopefully you come back next week. Not everybody's sick.
I may be.
Anything else? Okay, Hare Krishna, glories to Prabhupada, Vanchakalpa to the
Prabhascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.